I love DeMarcus.
One brain cell.
Uh,
One brain
One
cell.
brain cell. Thanks, Mark Lee. He did most of the work. But anyways, this is Two Baddies, One Brain Cell. I'm your host, Josine.
And I'm Annette.
Annette.
Just for clarification.
In this podcast, we'll be your representative Gen Z baddies, and we're here to talk about popular trends, K-pop. No, just kidding, not just K-pop.
Maybe a little teaser.
And their intersection with sustainability.
We bring in one expert, aka the brain cell, to educate us and our audience on whatever topic we are discussing. Here to jumpstart some tips on how we can be sexy as well as being conscious consumers. Being sexy is the number one thing. Number two
legalize
is being
hot.
Legalize, yeah. Hashtag legalize being hot. Let's jump right in today's conversation. For today's topic, we have a really interesting one and something that me and Josine have running conversations on. Today's topic is the sustainability of sustainable fashion. Josine, I have a question for you.
Hit me with it.
How would you define sustainable fashion?
I'm gonna be real. Sustainable fashion to me is just me going to the thrift store. I have yet to buy something from a sustainable brand. I was close to back in college. All I know is something about carbon neutral, which offsets carbon emissions.
Okay.
And
slay. Do you remember when the first time was you heard about sustainable fashion?
Reformation. All of my
big
friends.
Ones.
Yeah.
The big fat that girly.
Yeah, and I was actually really close to buying my graduation dress from Reformation.
We talked about this, me too.
Yeah, graduation never happened.
No, same. 2020, COVID 2020 girlies. Graduation never happened. When I think sustainable fashion, the first thing that comes to mind is Reformation, Everlane, Girlfriend Collective.
Her. I know her.
You know her. When I think of people that buy into sustainable fashion, it's like they are in a really good place in their life or in their finances. They know what they're doing. People like me and you who are just everyday girlies in their early 20s that are just starting out in their career, that's not something for us, but it's more of we should reach for that goal.
Yeah, we're getting there, but
it's
right
like
now
the popular girl in school. Everybody wants to be her, but you can't be her. That's what sustainable fashion feels like to me.
Yep.
Well, I mean, other than graduation that didn't happen, why have you not bought into sustainable fashion? If you did, what are some brands you have bought?
When I did mention that I knew Girlfriend Collective, I did place an order with them back in 2021, but my main issue was just the sizing. Not to toot my own horn here, but I'm just a girly, and I got some junk in the trunk, so I need clothes. Yeah, I need clothes that fit me. However, I feel like with a lot of sustainable brands, I didn't really see that. I did see that with Reformation. They have a plus line, but I think it's just, in general, really difficult to find something that would fit me and not cause me to have body dysmorphia. So that's why I kind of refrained from buying from sustainable fashion brands and just stick to thrifting.
I've never actually bought anything from Reformation, but I just like to try it on for fun. And you always have to go a size or two up, and it just really gets in the mind. When you try on a size that's not your size and it doesn't zip up, you're just kind of
Dude, I want to give up.
It jabs in the heart a little.
I mean, we've covered this in the previous podcast, but I feel like, we'll say it again, we are poor.
we don't have that money.
As much as we want to put our money towards something great, it's difficult to do that when you are budgeting, when you're new to having adult money. It's just difficult. It's hard.
Thrifting is our bestie, but we also know that thrifting isn't always the most accessible option for everybody, especially if you don't live in, for example, LA, like me and Josine, where a lot of our thrift stores may carry more trendy items. But I guess for some reasons why people do buy into sustainable fashion, they want to make more sustainable choices, they want to build a capsule wardrobe, right? They want pieces that will last quote unquote a lifetime. That also goes into buying quality pieces. And then also, I think it's just being influenced by others, right? I don't think sustainable fashion would have been where it is today if we didn't have a brand like Reformation. To get into the meat of this conversation, we have a brain cell for today's episode. A round of applause. Me and Josine did it. We did what we were going to say. And for today's brain cell, we are going to introduce Devon. Devon is an entrepreneur and a reluctant sustainable fashion and D2C TikToker. Those are exactly her words. We are so excited to have her join on and to speak a little bit more on this. So welcome, Devon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, guys.
Hello,
Thank you for having me. Super excited. Started my career in kind of management consulting, which is big ick, but just to be honest. But found out kind of my love for consumer. And I think growing up, I always was so interested in fashion, but it always felt like kind of too frivolous a thing to expect to go into yourself, right? I grew up watching like America's Next Top Model, and like the only career in fashion that I could see was like model, and like that's not me. So I actually studied engineering undergrad, became a consultant, but there is where I was able to kind of learn that, oh wait, there is like a business side to these consumer and fashion businesses. From there, have spent the last kind of 5 years plus working in strategy and operations roles in brands, both big and small, including some of those more kind of sustainable, or as I like to call them, better brands. Kind of really started to see the conflict, and I'm sure we will get into this, between the idea of a sustainable brand and how they have to sell. They always have to sell more and more and more product, and kind of just became frustrated with that conflict, which led me to where I am currently, which is, like you said, an entrepreneur. So about a year ago, left that game, so call myself a fashion industry dropout at this point, found my company Index. So we're a wardrobe app, so you can upload all of your items to our app. If you're lazy, we'll also send someone to your house to do it for you. But it's really about what comes afterwards. So you can actually plan your outfit, style them. We can connect you with a personal stylist to actually help you use what you already have. We all have so much stuff, but we're still so unhappy with it, or most of us are, right? We still walk into our closets and we're like, I have nothing to wear, right? When oftentimes we actually do. It's just a matter of knowing how to wear it. We also have a resale platform built right in to make circularity actually really easy. What's so hard from a consumer perspective about options like Poshmark and Depop right now, it's really annoying to have to take photos and write the product descriptions. And so I'm sure many of us have that pile in the back of our closets of things that we mean to resell, but it's just not happening. So if you already have all that stuff in your digital wardrobe, it's super easy to list. And so actually making circularity much easier for a regular person. Yeah.
That's so awesome. All this talk with building capsule wardrobes, it's like you guys are doing that, but a lot of that conversation is like, okay, here are the pieces you need to buy in order to build a capsule wardrobe.
Yes.
But you guys are like, you can do it with your own closet, babes.
Yeah, you can already do it right now. Just try it.
You can already do it. You can already do it. That's it. The concept of having a wardrobe that you can easily mix and match, you can, close your eyes and pull stuff out of it to wear together. That's amazing. But yeah, it's turned into this very commercialized concept of here's the checklist of things to go buy, and everyone's capsule wardrobe is going to be different.
When I was in middle school, there was this app that I found on the Apple Store, and this was before I had an iPhone. This was on my iPod. I'm like 12, right? This is circa 2010, and it's this app I found that was basically like your own personal stylist. You could send in pictures of what you're wearing, and then a person would get back to you and be like, oh, like, I like that, but maybe try it with this or whatever. So just imagine a little 12-year-old girl hopping on, imagine being the person on the other side of this app, right? And you have this 12-year-old girl every single day bothering you about what she should wear to school the next day. That was like my favorite app in middle school, and when it got deleted, my heart was broken. But then now we have Index. That's amazing.
It's back. It's back.
It's back. I'm for sure gonna need to download this app after we've finished this. Devon, I would love to hear your thoughts on all the things me and Josine kind of just spieled out from our own perspectives and just what we've experienced.
I think what stuck with me is, Josine, when you answered, like, what does sustainable fashion mean to you, or how are you doing it? And you said, I don't know, I can't really buy from those sustainable brands because X, Y, and Z, many valid reasons, right? It's expensive, it's not size inclusive to me, but I go to the thrift store, right? And that is actually very sustainable. It's upsetting to me, if anything, that you don't consider yourself a sustainable fashion girly. I think we've become so hyper-focused on it being defined by brands, and sustainable fashion is shopping from certain brands, when, at least in my opinion, it is not that at all, right? Sustainable fashion is a mindset, actually, about how you approach what you buy and how you buy it, and then so much is in how you actually use it, right? We also have gotten to a little bit of a binary mindset where it's like, okay, some brands are sustainable and that's good, others are not, and those are bad. And if I'm buying from those bad brands, then I'm not sustainable. It's all about relativity with sustainability and making better choices where you can. Progress, not perfection, right? So also not being too hard on yourself about what's going on. And there's lots of things that are in your control in terms of how you treat your things rather than who you are buying from.
Yeah. I personally still shop at like Zara and Abercrombie, but when I am shopping there, I am looking for pieces that I know that I'm gonna wear for a while. I still have so many clothes in my closet that are from these non-sustainable brands, but I've had them in my closet for like 5 to 6 years.
I mean, I shop at Zara and Abercrombie. I think most of us do. Many of us do. And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
We talk about sustainability, and again, we're so focused. I like to say production sustainability, like how a thing is made. That's what brands talk about. Therefore, and 99% of fashion is fashion brands, and so that's what has kind of been subsumed into the culture, right? It's all about how something is made. When it's only a small piece of the puzzle, it's important, and we should want to make progress there, and we should celebrate that, absolutely. But so much more is about how you use the thing and how you treat the thing, and are you actually wearing it. My hot take here is like, personally, I would rather you be super intentional, super thoughtful, buy a super limited number of things. I would rather you buy 5 things a year from Zara than 20 things from Reformation. That is actually a step forward, right? Of course, if you can make that choice, if you can put them head to head, if you're going to buy a dress and you want to buy it from Reformation instead of Zara, that's probably a better choice. But it's much more about the volume of things you're consuming, right? And so if that's your dichotomy.
I know right now when it comes to sustainable fashion, the hottest topic is Shein, right? That's the big name you hear. That's the big monster in this conversation. And while we understand and we definitely recognize the terribleness that is Shein,
with Shein.
the issue with Shein, I think the reason why me and Josine want to discuss this is because you're totally right. These fashion brands are built to sell and to create. Yes, you're a sustainable fashion brand, but you still have to keep up with these trend cycles.
You got winter drops, spring drops. Then they also push sales because then they're like, we gotta let go of whatever jackets we have left over.
Yep, Shein is the boogeyman in the room, and there's data on this. They are the worst of the worst when it comes to just the pace of newness. Brands exist for a specific purpose, which is that they're a business, and their business is to sell things. And that is true no matter who you are, whether you're Shein or whether you are the most ethical, sustainable, kissed by angels brand of all time. Your business model is to sell products. And so you can do that in a better way. There's a reason we are so focused on production sustainability, because it's the only thing that brands can do that is not in direct conflict with their financial incentive, right? Like they can't tell you to buy less things because that's
Against their model.
That's against what they need to have happen to exist, right? What they can do, though, if we can change our materials, we can use less water, like whatever it is, which again is important and good, but is only like one very small piece of the puzzle. And this is where it's a tough thing, where you can blame brands for overproducing and pushing overconsumption, etc. We can push them and ask them to do a little better there, but just being realistic, fundamentally, that is what they are designed to do.
I've stopped doing this now. Just gonna let that be out there. The world. Every time there
Don't
would be like,
cancel
an
me.
event. No. Every time there would be an event, either Christmas, my birthday, a friend's birthday, I would literally buy new clothes all the time. I guess, how do you balance the way people consume clothing with sustainable practices?
So there are always steps you can make to reducing your consumption, especially if you're talking about special occasions. I think rental is great. It is perfect for special occasion items where you are not going to be using them in the future, right? Perfect use case. But I would say, I guess in general, kind of how do you downshift consumption? I'm a millennial girly. For me, it was going to Forever 21, right? Like me and my best friend would go probably once a month to Forever 21 and like ball outrageous, right? Like, which for us was like, I don't know, spend $100 on 5 or 6 things.
Also, wait, sorry.
Right? So we bought
a pause. There is something about the Forever 21 like lighting and air where if you're in there for too long, you start to get a little lightheaded, and the music gets a little. You get to a point where you're just, I don't have the energy to try this on. I'm just gonna pick whatever and then check out.
Probably. I have not been in a store in probably 5 years, but I believe you. We're buying all these things. It makes you feel, it gives you that dopamine hit in the moment where you get that package on your doorstep, you feel amazing. At the same time, you look in your closet and you're like, I still don't have anything to wear. A month down the line, this isn't actually that fun, and I just feel like I need to keep buying. You know, many of us are interested in fashion and love fashion, but the only tool we have been given by the industry is to go shopping, right? There's actually been like no other creative outlets of like, how do I interact with fashion that isn't in a shopping way? And so I think there's this realization of, okay, I've tried this. Is it actually making me happy? Do I actually feel like I'm stylish and I have what I want to wear? And for many of us, the answer is still no. I feel very like school marmish sometimes, being like, just buy fewer things, right? Which is like easy to say, hard to do. I've set a very tangible goal this year for myself of only buying 12 new things for the course of the year. So that's like one a month. And I have found this actually very freeing. Again, shift your mindset. If you're only buying one thing a month, you can afford to spend more on that thing than if you were buying 10 things, right? Which is actually very fun. The other thing is when you were a kid and for whatever reason you like earned a reward and your mom was like, I'm going to take you to Target or Toys R Us or whatever, and you can pick out one thing. It felt like really exciting and invigorating and thrilling. You're like, oh my gosh, I get to go to the store. I get to pick out anything that I want. And it was more a process of, okay, what's the thing that I'm going to pick that's going to make me the happiest? This constraint has actually been freeing.
And it sounds like it's something that you look forward to and something that the building of the excitement, like you said.
Yeah. I have a whole wish list system. Like I'm tracking the things I'm thinking about. It's like a treat, right? Where it's like a guilt-free thing, right? So yeah, buying fewer things does not have to feel like a downer.
I love that comparison. I was just transported back to when I was like 6 years old and then walking into Toys R Us. That's amazing.
Finding the biggest thing too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finding the biggest thing that fits within your parents' budget.
Are we interested in going into like the dynamics that happen at these sustainable brands and like what are the decisions that are made and why?
Yeah, of course. Why not?
I'm curious now that you brought it up. Cause
Yeah, I know. Now that you bring it
there's
up, I mean,
nothing here.
this is brain cell time. This is all
Yeah.
for you to bring
Let's
whatever
do it.
you want.
Let's do it. I'm ready to dump. If you want to also think about, is a sustainable brand sustainable and like what's going on behind the scenes? I'll say a couple of things that people maybe don't realize from being in those rooms and those sustainability conversations of, you know, how are we going to make progress in the making of a thing? They put forward very glossy, very polished, very simple marketing around how a thing is more sustainable, but there is so much complexity underneath. And this is where, is it greenwashing? Is it not? Can be a question that comes out, but it's complicated. There is actually very limited, or I would almost say no consensus in the industry, even on what is better or worse when it comes to sustainable production methods. So organic cotton sounds great, right? We all have kind of an understanding what it is. It's very widely appreciated. Okay, it means no pesticides. And there are real benefits to eliminating chemical pesticides in the production of cotton, especially related to how pesticides can potentially leak into waterways and affect biodiversity, right? So that is a real benefit of organic cotton. But on the flip side, the pesticides were there for a reason. And not using those chemical pesticides means that the cotton yields or how much cotton you get out of a single acre of farmland is actually decreased, which means that to produce the same amount of cotton with organic cotton methods versus conventional, you actually have to use more land, more water, more energy. What's better or worse, right? Not having the pesticides or more water, energy, land. And a lot of times it will come down to the specific conditions on a specific farm. So on the pesticide use, which exact pesticides are they using? How close are the waterways? Do they have filtration systems that are able to mitigate the pesticides that leak in? So there are all sorts of trade-offs that are very real and come down to a very local basis. Worse, but at the end of the day, we're not able really to fully digest that. Brands will end up basically choosing organic because, we can't really figure this out. It's very complicated, but at least organic, we know it has the benefit of no pesticides and it has this positive association in people's minds. They will understand what that means. So that's why we go with organic cotton, right? Rather than it truly being the best choice. That's like a hard truth about the sustainability conversations happening within brands. It's not necessarily about what's better or worse, but what's actually easier to communicate. I would say almost all brands, the people making these decisions are not experts, right? And especially in smaller brands, and I would still even consider on the full scale of things like Reformation or Girlfriend Collective or anyone else, a relatively smaller mid-sized brand, right? And the people in production, they come from careers in supply chain. They're much more on the business side is where their experiences. They don't have the training. And again, they would maybe even need a degree to be able to like parse these trade-offs. All of the people I've met in production they're very wonderful people with incredible intentions. They're not the expert or equipped to be able to properly evaluate these trade-offs in a way, right? A real thing within brands around these discussions is it is more expensive, right, to make these choices, which isn't just a conversation on the consumer side, it's within the brands as well. Okay, are we going to transition from whatever, conventional cotton to organic cotton, which is an upcharge? And how are we going to handle that, right? We know that if we pass this on, like we may lose some customers, right? Customers will be priced out of our brand. And so that's also part of the conversation of like, can we afford to make this change? Also a reason why I say like focus on your consumption and how you're treating things rather than the sustainability claims, because it is just so muddied. And even in the industry, we don't know what is better or worse. If you're going to ask any question about how things are made, I would personally recommend asking more of a question around the ethics of their labor practices. Those questions are very black and white. Are you paying the workers in your factory a living wage? Yes or no? And you would be shocked that so many brands either A, don't know the answer, or B, the answer is no. Even the brands who are out there touting about their sustainability from an environmental point of view claim.
It also kind of sounds like creating a quote-unquote sustainable method in production, you can't reproduce that because a lot of the sourcing might have to be local. From my perspective at least, that it goes against that constant cycle of having product pushed out, having articles of clothing pushed out. Another question I have is just with a shift in kind of like going on to the consumer, how do you lessen the burden on the consumer? You know, we feel stuck.
I know, it's really hard because if the brand is being authentic in making genuinely better choices, then those choices typically are not going to fit in a marketing campaign. So it's really hard. I think it's really hard. I think there are many people in the industry working on tools, you know, like the Higg Index, but the more we can have these standardized tools to be able to measure against versus like each brand deciding for themselves, like how they're going to measure and what decisions they're going to make, right? I think that will be better and more clear. I think the other thing, quite frankly, again, because these sustainability claims are so hard for the average person to parse, and even the brands themselves often don't fully understand them. Evaluate the people behind the brands, right? And look at the founder and the CEO and like how authentic do you think they're being? Maybe is actually a better way than trying to evaluate the individual sustainability claims because it's so muddy. Can you look at that company and the people who are leading it and say, okay, I think they're doing it for the right reasons. Therefore, I trust that even though I might not be able to parse and understand what's going on underneath, I can trust that they are at least authentically trying to do good and that they're trying to make better choices versus like, I think they're just doing this because they think they need sustainability campaign for marketing. That's what I do. I do two things. I evaluate the intentions of the people behind the brands and the black and white labor ethics questions.
When you're talking about these sustainable brands, right, they're smaller teams. They have limitations to how much they can research and how much they can actually do for their brands. I would love to know your opinion on like Patagonia, right? They are a bigger company. They pride themselves off of their sustainability and these organizations they work with. Just what do you think about Patagonia?
I have a lot of respect for Patagonia. It's probably the brand company I most respect in this field. Again, look at the founder, look at the people behind the brand and their intentions and what they are doing. Lends a lot of credibility to how they are going about their sustainability initiatives. Again, I'm not the scientist. I can't probably speak to the specifics of what they are doing, but I do think they're innovators and they are actually pushing forward. How does innovation and sustainability actually happen? Really two ways. One, brands push it forward, but this is going to be limited to the Patagonias of the either they are so fully like all in on it, that's their entire brand, their entire business, their entire founding structure. It's like R&D dollars to actually make scientific improvements in how you are, whatever the production step is. Either you are that committed and or like some combination of you have the dollars to spend. So this is like the Patagonias of the world, even like the Nikes of the world, even the Gaps, right? Like they are the ones who at least have the dollars to be able to push R&D. I would say maybe the Gap of the world is not necessarily doing it because they're so authentically invested, trusted, but because they have the dollars and they know that is important for their brands. But they're still doing it. I feel like there's maybe this picture of like the industry being super collaborative with each other and sharing knowledge and improvements. And it just kind of isn't that way. Like the brands who are developing it for themselves, they're developing it for themselves. It's their R&D. And then even on the smaller brand side, so the way it happens is that your factories or your mills will bring you these different choices. So either they develop them themselves or they develop them with the Patagonias, the Nikes, and the Gap, and their exclusivity deal ran out. And so now it's available to the rest of you guys, right? It's a competitive advantage to have these things that only we can talk about amazingly made alpaca and no one else can for whatever period of time. Who you are working with and who your factories are and what innovations they're bringing to you is actually considered basically kind of trade secret.
How you've kind of gone about dismantling our preconceived notions of sustainable fashion. Annette and I used to think about it before having this discussion about how we always assume that sustainable fashion, you kind of have to buy from sustainable brands. So how do you go about making those changes in real life?
First, we talked about this a bit, but buy fewer things.
Yep.
Easy to say, hard to do. Progress over perfection. I found it helpful to set a goal. You don't have to be perfect, but just being mindful about the things you are buying and why and how. The most important question being like, are you actually going to be able to use that thing? It doesn't matter how perfectly made something is if it just ends up sitting in your closet unused and you toss it. It literally doesn't matter. That being said, it's okay to make mistakes. And like that's human. So first of all, don't beat yourself up too hard about that. And second, like take that opportunity then to resell that item. A lot of people let things kind of just like waste away in your closet, kind of just like just in case, or like, ooh, I don't accept any butts in my closet.
It's not worth the trauma and the
it's not worth
brain work.
No. If it's past that and you kind of don't realize the but until 3 months later, like that's also okay, but like don't let it just sit in your closet unused. Like the most respectful and sustainable thing you can do with that item is then actually just find a new owner for it. It is resale over donation. Donations are mostly going to landfill. So resale is great because not only do you make a little money off of it that you can then reinvest in something else, but what's great about it is that it ensures that that item is going to someone who actually wants it.
And will use it.
Yes, like they're excited to have it. If you don't really care about the money, you just want it gone, but you do want to find someone for it, just like price it low, right? Like make someone's day with the best Poshmark find of all time. So that's my second tip. So one, buy fewer things. If you make the mistake, don't let it sit around in your closet unused. Like put it back into circulation. Next, wear what you have.
True.
Again, wear what you have. If you like have something coming up, if you notice your first impulse is like, ooh, I got to go shopping for something, redirect your energy
somewhere else
to your
closet and find something.
Yes,
okay.
to your closet.
I'm taking note.
And recognizing that styling is not shopping. There's been like a stitch fixification of our culture where personal styling has been equated with personal shopping when they are not the same. And there is so much creativity and fulfillment actually in participating in fashion through styling rather than only shopping, which like I mentioned earlier is kind of the only tool that we've been given. And so like dive into the world of styling. I love TikTok creators like Alison Bornstein, Carla Rockmore. I think they're amazing just in terms of learning someone's thought process about how to put things together in different ways. To me, that's the magic in fashion. It's like actually the most stylish girlies are the ones who like put things together in interesting ways. Of course, at some point you can also overconsume secondhand, but again, progress, not perfection. I am not going to be mad at you for many, many years for doing that. If the original sin in sustainability is that the thing was made at all, if you can replace as many of your purchases as you can with a secondhand thing, meaning that a new thing wasn't created for you to own that thing, then that's great. I love Poshmark and Depop. The Real is one of my favorite places to be. And then one of the beauties of secondhand as well is, again, you can stretch yourself up into that like next tier of brands that like you wouldn't have been able to afford new. If you have a FOMO thing, like all the cool girls are doing it. If you, right, there's also a benefit to shopping secondhand and really honing your eye and honing your styling eye, again, rather than your shopping eye. When you're in the thrift store, like ain't nothing cute about that environment, right? You are forced to focus only on the item itself, its inherent qualities. Do you think they're cool? Do you like the style of this item? Rather rather than being super influenced by whatever the social media person who posted it, or the way that Reformation is showing it on their website, or whatever other outside influence that makes you think it's cool and your style, but then you buy it and it's not really you. Shopping secondhand, it can feel frustrating and it can feel hard at first because you don't have all of that context telling you what to buy and how to wear it. But then if you actually get over that hurdle, then, I mean, that's why the cool girls are cool, because they are shopping secondhand. So some of those pieces are just cool in themselves, but it's also, they've trained their eye towards what they actually like and does it fit their style rather than the other way around.
I'm gonna need to write that and put it in my room. Styling is not shopping. I love that. That's like the first time I've heard it, but it's so true. It's so much more fun to brag to your friends about a cool thrift find that you bought for $5 than the $200 dress you got at Reformation.
I ask myself before I buy something is like, if someone asked me where I got this, would I be proud to tell them about it? And I think we've gotten to this place where the items we own are so disposable.
Yeah.
If you buy them for $10 on Amazon and you're not even proud to own them, then you're going to treat them as disposable as well, which is like a huge problem.
I think this is the first time I've like received sustainable tips that I can actually practically do in my life. Because I feel like most of the time you hear it's just like, oh, shop at these stores and not these, and like just buy less.
I know. It's easy and hard at the same time. On my TikTok, I get people in the comments all the time being like, okay, but what brands do you recommend? Tell me a brand. It's easy, right? If I just shop from this brand, check mark done, like I'm good, I'm sustainable. We are brand obsessed, and I get it. Everyone's trying to figure out where to shop, but it also, it is exclusive, right? It means that any given brand is not going to be right for everyone. They might be out of reach for some people financially. It might not be size inclusive. It's easy, but it's not necessarily super inclusive. On the flip side, like these tips, they're free and accessible, but it does mean that it is your prerogative to implement them rather than someone else's.
It's not that difficult. Just look into your wardrobe. Find something that brings you that happiness, like you said. Because in reality, I'm sure that there's something in your closet that can fit whatever event you're trying to go to. And if there isn't, again, this is your one time to make that purchase, because you only limit your purchases to only 12 things a year. It's not just trying to find your style, but I mean, it's also just reminding yourself that sustainable fashion is accessible, it's doable, and you can do it without having to spend cash. It's just changing the way you think about your clothes and where you get it from.
That's why I'm on this podcast yelling about it. It's so sad. There's so many people out there who want to engage, but they just have this misguided notion by our cultural focus on production sustainability and shopping the right brands, right? That they assume that they can't. It's a total disconnect.
And the lack of information. Can brands just share it? What happens if we all are just kind and share information?
Can brands stop gatekeeping? That's the second tagline.
No, literally. They're just gaslighting us.
They're gaslighting. I mean, yeah, unfortunately, very few brands are going to tell you to buy less things.
Everything you've discussed today is more than what me and Josine could have expected, and these tips are amazing. I guess a fifth tactical tip that you didn't mention is download Index, and if you need help with your styling, you have an app right here that can help you do so. I guess to kind of wrap things up, Devon, if you have any plugs, anything happening in your life, in your career that you'd love to share, we would love to hear about it.
If you want to find me personally, I'm on TikTok at Devon Rule, straight up simple. If what I said today resonated, if you're interested in styling over shopping, Index is for you. You know, upload your closet. Again, we'll come to you if you are too lazy and you live in certain areas. So if you're in SF, New York, LA, basically all of Southern California, we can come to you. But once you have it, you can actually connect with a personal stylist and they will help you figure out your life and figure out your closet and actually get you set of the things you have. Index with a Y, INDYX.
We'll be sure to include all of your information in our description.
Thank you so much, Devon. We loved hearing your thoughts. We loved picking your brain. Thank you for giving over these brain cells to me and Josine. We have gained one more brain cell in each of our minds. It's to kind of social plug ourselves. Make sure to follow Anti-Consumer Consumer Club on YouTube. You can also listen to this podcast, Two Baddies, One Brain Cell, on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Remember, style over shopping.
There we go. Done.